You're fighting for borders in other countries, and they don't want to fight the Democrats for the border of our country.
And by fight for the border, he means steal for the border, because that's exactly what he's doing. The Department of Defense has redirected $1 billion in funding to allow construction of some of Donald Trump's border wall. It announced late on Monday night in a move Democrats said would worsen existing substantial shortfalls in defense spending. So let's just stop right there to clarify. The Defense Department does not need any more money. It doesn't make stealing from it for a political pet project right, but there have been constant stories about misuse of Defense Department funds, like the time $800 million for construction projects just went missing, or the time it just wasted $28 billion for no reason, or the time that it failed its audit in such an embarrassing way that the entire New York Times editorial board wrote an opinion piece condemning Pentagon incompetence. And yet, after all of that, Trump is seeking about $750 billion for fiscal year 2020. That's a nearly 5% increase. At the same time, Trump is telling us that we're ending the wars in Afghanistan and Iraq and pulling troops out of Syria. So what do we need that extra money for exactly, especially when it comes at the cost of the Department of Education and Health and Human Services, two areas where Trump is proposing steep cuts? Well, to circumvent democracy and fund a border wall when you couldn't get the funds democratically from Congress, of course. Patrick Shanahan, the acting defense secretary, said the $1 billion would go towards 57 miles of 18-foot-high fencing and other measures along the border, CNN reported. This is for the national emergency that Trump has declared. And details about Trump's budget proposals indicate that Trump could use this tactic yet again. Trump's military budget includes roughly $9 billion in emergency funds that would go towards hurricane relief and border security. So that's for the 2020 budget. He could do it again. And in a related controversy, one significant shift in this year's budget request is a massive hike in a controversial war account that the White House's own budget director, former Republican Representative Mick Mulvaney, has criticized as a slush fund. The fund, the Overseas Contingency Operations OCO account, is not subject to mandatory congressional spending limits. Of the total $718 billion request for the Defense Department, $165 billion would go to OCO. Mulvaney called the OCO a slush fund, but I'll go further. Trump and his ilk are basically using the Defense Department in general as a slush fund for their random policy priorities and whims, an increase in the amount of money for emergency funds, aka the border wall, and a huge hike in the OCO account where Trump can spend without the outlined congressional limits. I will reiterate, why is that necessary if we're actually withdrawing troops from the Middle East, if ISIS is already defeated, as you say?
This just in, the White House declaring moments ago that the ISIS caliphate in Syria has been 100% defeated. Press Secretary Sarah Sanders making that declaration to reporters on Air Force One.
So there's absolutely no need for the increase, which brings me to my final point. I keep hearing that the Democrats hate the troops because progressives don't want perpetual war. But isn't using the DoD funds for your personal political games pretty anti-troops? Or how about sending them into needless wars to die for no reason, or fattening up the defense budget for defense contractors instead of giving troops raises?
Troops will only see a pay increase of 2.6, not 10%. And Trump's claim that this year's bump is long overdue? Also untrue.
You haven't gotten one in more than 10 years. More than 10 years. And we got you a big one.
Yet according to Trump's own Defense Department, military personnel have consistently received annual pay raises.
Being pro-war doesn't make you pro-troops. In fact, I believe it's the opposite. But using the Defense Department budget for the wall certainly doesn't make you pro-troops. It makes you a political partisan, cynically using the troops' resources for your own corrupt, racist ends.